So, I had this idea. I had this idea to share coming out stories. Why? I got an email from a young viewer of Street Behavior asking, what's a good way to come out to your parents? How should I tell my mom? And as I started typing this email, I just figured there's no one answer for that question. There's several. I mean, honestly, how many different ways have you heard somebody come out of the closet? Maybe be by accident, maybe something happened, your mom's going through your shit. So there's so many different ways that you can come out of the closet. So why not just share our stories? And maybe somebody will learn something from it or be a little bit more encouraged and actually think it's okay to come out. And I mean, also you could just hear the worst case scenario, which isn't always the best. Me, myself, honestly, like, I had the fairy tales of coming out stories because I grew up in a very accepting family. I mean, it was like forcefully to a sense because a good portion of my family is gay. So I'm benefited from that. Um, but the way I actually did come out was so funny. One day I was out with my first boyfriend at the mall by my house, and my mom shops there all the time. So, not even thinking about it, not even wondering about it, I ran into my mother and awkwardly introduced her to who is my boyfriend. Not as my boyfriend, of course, but my friend. And at the time, the boyfriend I was with, he was out. He was like proud and all that wonderful stuff. But I wasn't yet. I mean, most of my friends back then would look at me when I came out like, okay, like, bitch, duh. Like, so when I actually really did come out, it was interesting to not think that everybody was just like, yeah, okay, whatever, fine. So when after we after we left the mall, I wanted to show him a picture in a photo album from high school. So we went back to my house, went up to my room. My father was there. I introduced him to my father. My father had no problem. My father was awesome. Um, so I showed him the picture. We left. I thought nothing of it. The next day, my mom flipped out about the boy being upstairs in our house because, yeah, my mom's very strict about having people upstairs in her house. Um, so that upset me because she called him funny looking. Being your first love, your first boyfriend, it things you take everything seriously. So I wrote my mom a letter because I'm a writer, so I get everything out best in writing. I hate talking to people, which is bad, but I actually wrote my mom a letter telling her how it was wrong, it was rude of her to call my boyfriend funny looking, and so on and so forth. And I wrote my father a letter telling, hey, Dad, just so you know, I just told Mom I was gay, so she's probably going to tell you I'm gay now, so I just thought I would tell you before she did. I put both of these letters next to each other on the kitchen counter, like somebody else wasn't going to read it. My sister read it. She thought it was fucking hilarious, which my sister consequently eventually came out, and she's gay too. But, yeah, that's my coming out story. It was fun, I should say.
All right, so this is my coming out story. Um, Not too much unlike my character. I grew up in a pretty strict, not so strict, but semi-strict Christian household. And so my personal belief obviously in lines with my character, and that's why you guys kind of relate to me as much as you do. But nonetheless, my mother, I decided that I wasn't going to tell my mother about my sexuality until after I had graduated from high school and moved out of the house and was in college, and we'd have that conversation then. And then growing up in a pretty suburban neighborhood, we were one of the first houses on the block to get a computer. And not still not knowing how a computer would work or that there was an actual history, I began to be inquisitive, like most guys that have computers. And one day I was in the kitchen washing dishes, and my mother was on the computer, and she goes, "What's this men for men? What is that?" And I think terror and shock covered me in the kitchen. When luckily she couldn't see me. But then that spawned a conversation, and it made me so nervous that as I'm washing the dishes, I break a glass in my hand. So not only am I terrified and I'm nervous because we're having this conversation and I'm not out of the house and I'm not in college, but I'm bleeding because I have just broken a glass in my hand because I was so nervous. And that spawned a really great conversation between my mother and I about just where I stood sexually and what my preferences were. And initially, she was very, very fine. We had a great conversation. She loved me nonetheless, whether she agreed with it or understood it. But in the days to come, it was a little bit hard for her to kind of swallow the pill that was her son was gay and not going to have any kids. And so it takes some time for your family to kind of digest your sexuality, but at the end of the day, you're all the better for it because you are staying true to yourself and you're allowing that gap or that bridge that you've built with your family, that'll repair itself as long as you just stay true to who you are and do it at the right time. I mean, obviously, I couldn't have planned her going on the computer, but at the end of the day, I'm grateful for the relationship that we have, and she loves her son nonetheless. So that's my coming out story. I hope you are touched by it. I hope it helps you, and I'm glad I could share it.
Coming out. Let's see. Well, should I go way, way back? No, I shouldn't. Because some of y'all might be watching this, and I don't want to put anyone of you on the spot. So, I moved to New York around 10 years ago, and I just woke up one day and I said, I like girls. Maybe I can date them. So I seeked out on a mission for a woman. And I found a Starbucks girl. And, yeah. And I called my mom and I said, hey, Mom, yeah, so I'm like dating a woman, we're like having sex. And she was like, okay. And I was like, are you all right with that? Like, is that cool? Is that all right? And she was like, honey, I've known you were bisexual since you were 5. And I was like, oh, so you labeled me when I was 5. I mean, I don't know much about, like, if my mom still thinks I'm bisexual, but I am in a relationship with a woman for a very long period of time. So if that makes me a lesbian, then I'm a lesbian. If it makes me bisexual, because I'm still attracted to men, then call it what you will. But as long as my mother is okay with it, I'm stress-free, and I don't even care. Actually, when you turn this off, I have to tell you a story. Bye now.
Oh, God. The sordid topic of coming out. A lot of people in our community know that this is the most awkward, most horrible time of adolescence. If that's when you come out, then some of us, unfortunately, don't have the ability to hide it. It just happens, and you just pray for the best for acceptance. But with mine, honestly speaking, I never actually even really came out. It was a horrible, horrible situation. I can laugh about it now, but at the time, I was devastated. Okay, so mind you, my family, they don't really fuck. They love me, they support me as long as I'm happy, healthy, whatever. But at the same token, they don't. There's not a lot of room for foolishness in my family. My mother was a teacher. My stepfather was a drill instructor in the Marines. And then you got me. You see, I don't necessarily fit in that equation. I'm loud. I'm extrovert. I'm happy-go-lucky, funny. They ain't doing all that shit. So I'm already the oddball, and they good with flannels, and my mother's very fashionable, but she's a conservative individual. You see what I got on now. See, it was just a lot wrong in that equation. But to get to the moral of the story, what happened was I don't know if you all know, around my generation time, before there was my Vidster and all that, we had magazines, and then the first site that we had on the internet, and mind you, this is during AOL dial-up. Y'all remember having to do that one? You couldn't get porn unless it was on Kazaa, or if you went to this site that I frequented, which was called Butt Buddies. Don't judge me. So anyway, what happened was, at night, I came alive at night. There was nothing I wanted to do but just sit and wait on pins and needles for my mother to go to sleep. There was two things I looked forward to: getting up on my AOL dial-up so I could download some porn, or watching Real Sex on HBO. That was a hot show. Do you remember it? But anyway, so what happened was, I had been finding some porn that I was interested in on Kazaa, and I was downloading those. So I had downloaded, a little bit of porn, getting my rocks off, whatever. And, after, when 4 o'clock comes, it's time to get ready for school. You delete the cookies, you do all that, everything's good, so you move on with life. So this one particular day, I came back, regular day from school. It was like, Tuesday, Wednesday, just on a Tuesday, regular day. I come home, my stepfather's sitting at the computer, and I come in with my backpack. I'm tired. Woo! Glad I'm home. He's like, "What's up, PJ? What's up, Rodney? How you doing?" Oh shit, I ain't supposed to say names. Sorry. Well, my stepfather was just like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "I'm good. Such." He asked me regular, no change in his voice, no flicker in his eyes, nothing. He was just like, "Well, how was your day? Such and such, blah, blah, blah." Then he asked me just as nonchalantly, and I'll never forget it as long as the day I live. He said, "PJ, you been downloading gay porn?" Mind you, I was sipping something at the time. I almost shat on myself. I was like, what do you mean? What? What are you talking about, gay porn? What are you talking about? I'm completely oblivious. I don't even know what porn or gay is at this moment. I'm like, what are you talking about? I have no idea. I'm a Christian. So he says, "Well, there's gay porn up here, and I ain't downloading gay porn." So then, nonchalantly, he calls my mother, who's currently still at work. He calls her on the phone. "Hey, how you doing? How's your day going? What you want for dinner? What's such and such and such?" So anyway, have you been downloading gay porn? He asks my mother this. I can hear my mother over the phone like, no. So he was like, "Okay, I'm good. So, I'll see you when you get home. Bye, babe. Smooches." Hangs up the phone. He says, "So, PJ, I ain't downloading gay porn. Your mama ain't downloading gay porn. You been downloading gay porn?" I'm like, no. Like, no, I don't even... I was like, yeah, matter of fact, I think I know what it was. I tried to download this lesbian shit, and that was what was come up. Because, on the Kazaa files, you could never preview the film before you downloaded it. You would just see it later. So I was like, yeah, it was some lesbian shit I tried to get, such and such and such. Then he looked at me in my eyes without blinking. I'll never forget it as long as the day I live. He said, "Yeah, PJ, but 13 times?" And then went down the list and played them. One by one. White men yakking, black men yakking. Just all kinds of sodomy and oral shit and all. And at that point, I had nothing else I could say, nothing else I could do. I just said, I grabbed my backpack, I went in my room. I didn't come out for 3 days. But I think that was my coming out story. I think that pretty much confirmed what team I was playing on at that moment. And since that day, we have never spoken about it except for this time that my mother was real nosy. I used to hide shit. I hid something. I'm taking long, but it's all right. I like to talk. But I hid a note from my boyfriend at the time because I was I was one of them young, fast kids. So I was in the process of, leaving my mother's house and I was 16. I had hid a note from my boyfriend in the lining of my couch under it. Somehow or another, this found that note. She used to search for everything, like where in the world's Carmen Sandiego. That was the only other time that the gay thing came up. She was like, "I don't care if you're black, green, gray, gold, purple. You're not moving out of my house. You're my son, such and such, such." So that's my coming out story. I don't know if some of y'all can relate, but there it goes.
Oh, I could start? Am I supposed to say something at the beginning or no?
Just talk free.
I don't know. I don't know how these things work. Coming out for me was interesting because I guess everybody already knew, so it was just me kind of coming to terms with it. I used to watch Oprah a lot as a child, and I was watching one episode of Oprah, and I saw that she said whenever you have something to get out, write it in a letter and give it to whomever you have to give it to. So one day while I was in health class, I decided to write my mother a letter. And I wrote this really long letter. It was like 3 pages. And I kept reiterating the fact that I'm not gay. I'm bisexual. I like girls too. And then I was like, I guess I could put it at the end. So I finally put it at the end. And then early the next morning, because I didn't live with my mother, I went to my mother's house and I put it on the kitchen table underneath her keys, because that's where she leaves her keys. And then I left. Didn't say I was in the house, didn't say anything to her, I just left. And then later on that afternoon, I got a call from my mother, and she was like, honey, we need to talk. I was like, here we go. So then we finally talked, and she was like, well, something that we don't really talk about, and I always knew, but you're my child, and I love you regardless. And that was it pretty much. And then she went to Trinidad on vacation, and she told my father, and that's how he found out. And then he told everybody else in the family, and then he called me, and then he asked me about it, and I was like, well, he called my brother first, and he was like, you have something to tell me? And my brother goes, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he was like, are you gay? And my brother goes, not me. So he goes like, then who? He was like, well, that's not my place to tell you. So then he hangs up from my brother, and then he calls me back, and then he goes, so do we have to talk about something? I was like, I don't have nothing to talk to you about. Me and you cool. He's like, all right, okay. He's like, you sure you don't have anything to tell me? I was like, no. Should I have something to tell you? I don't know. My father and I relationship wasn't really good at that time, so I really didn't care to tell him. So I was like, nope, don't have nothing to tell you. I'm cool. So then he was like, all right, I'm gonna just come out and ask, are you gay? Yep. And he was like, okay, all right. So I don't understand it, but you're my son and I love you. I don't understand it, so I'm gonna try to understand it. And I was like, I guess. He's like, so what does that mean? Does that mean I have 2 sons and a daughter? Does that mean I have 2.5 sons, 2.25 sons? I was like, no, you have 3 sons. He was like, oh, okay, all right. And then after that, we started to talk a little bit more, and then he kind of got a little loose, if you will, with the conversation, and it was cool after that. Like, we have a better relationship now, and he understands me better now, so I'm happy with the way everything went about. I'm cool with it. But that was my coming out story.
Action.
My coming out story. So I have a few different stories, but the one I think I'm going to talk about is the one that I came out to my mother, which I didn't do until I was in college, and I was 21. So there's a game called Two Truths and a Lie, and my mom and I, that'll come back up later. My mom and I were out drinking, having fun, and I was like, I need to tell my mom. I was getting some liquid courage, taking shots and stuff. We were on our way back, and in my head, the game Two Truths and a Lie popped up into my head, and I was like, this is the perfect way for me to come out to my mother. It's not the perfect way to come out to your mother when you've been drinking, because the two truths that I told were the fact that I was gay, and the fact that I was smoking a lot of pot, and then the lie was the fact that what was it? I was like trying to like throw her off the scent of that I was gay, and I was like, oh, the lie is I'm quitting college, so she would like be totally thrown off guard. Long story short, not the happiest news. She didn't really care about the whole gay thing, which was a good thing, but everything else she was very concerned about. So after a lot of yelling and drunken back and forth. We settled it and squashed everything, but I feel like after I felt like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders once I actually did get to tell her. And I felt like our relationship actually grew stronger, and I don't know why. Like, looking back in hindsight, I don't know why it took me so long to actually come out to her. Like, she should have been the first person I came out to. And that's my coming out story.
I'm looking straight, or
Yeah.
all right. So I knew something was wrong when I was like 9, and then when I was 14, my friend, she told me about this gay parade, and I wasn't doing anything that day, so I was just like, okay, sure, we can go, and we went with a couple of friends. But then when I got there, I just felt like I was at home, so I was having a good time, and you know, everyone were free, and people were everywhere just having a good time. So when I got home, I was telling my mom, like, you know, I went to the gay parade today, and I had such a good time, and I'm going on and on and on about it. So then she's like, oh, is there something you need to tell me? And I'm just like, no, you know, I'm just having a good old time. You know, everything was fine. I had a good time. So then she just came out like, you know, are you gay? And I'm just like, I had a good time. You know, everything was cool. But eventually I was just like, yeah, you know, I like girls, whatever. So about a week later, she made me tell my dad. I wasn't ready to tell my dad, but, you know, I called him up. So everything was cool at first, and I was just like, Daddy. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I like guys. And he's like, okay. And then I'm like, I like girls too. And he's just like, what? And he's going crazy. And I don't know, like, I guess with time, you know, everybody got used to it and accepted it. But that's pretty much what happened.
How do I start it?
Just start talking when I say ask.
And this whatever comes out, comes out?
Yep.
Am I allowed to cry?
Yep.
Let me try and make myself cry. We going for Emmys, baby.
Ratings right there,
Okay. So, I'm the only boy. I have 4 sisters. I have 2 older sisters, 2 younger sisters. So when I came out, it was a little hard for my family to take because me being the only boy, how they're going to continue the legacy and all of that. I was 14, freshman in high school, and I was in love. You couldn't tell me no different. Baby, when I tell you I was in love, I thought I was in love. He was 23, I was 14. It was love. You know, when you're in love, you just want to express it. So I decided to tell my mother that I was in love with somebody. Of course, she inquired on who, and then I ended up revealing to her that it was a man. I thought that, like, she could have died right there. I felt like I broke her entire heart. Like, it was the worst feeling in the world. I couldn't go to school for a week. She didn't leave the house for a week. We was just in that house crying. I was locked in my room. She was locked in her room. We both losing weight sad, just crying. It was the most traumatic experience of my life. Not because she didn't accept me, but because I thought I hurt her. So when she finally was able to speak to me and express to me that she loved me and she cared about me, and she was more upset about the fact that he was an old man and I was a young boy and he was taking advantage of me, and I didn't see that. It opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I think my coming out story is a lot different than other people. Like, my family, they still love me. Like, and other families have a hard time accepting it, and my family was like, well, fuck it. I mean, well, hey, you're you, and they accept that.
If you're a teenager and you're thinking about coming out to your family and you just need somebody to talk to, or even if you just need somebody to talk to in general, here are some contact information that you might be interested in.